Welcome to the project. I'm Richie, I'm a data evangelist here at DataCamp, and I'm pretty excited to be telling you how to get started using GPT to generate some text. Now, I'm sure at this point you've heard of ChatGPT. It's just wildly popular, has like over 1 billion visits per month. It's brilliant for generating any kind of text. However, the ChatGPT web interface is mostly suitable for non-technical use cases. So when you're doing data analysis or data science, quite often you want to be doing some programming. Maybe you want to be automating something. And in this case, it's better to access GPT via the OpenAI API. So GPT is the name for the AI that powers the web application ChatGPT. And today, as well as working with GPT, we're also going to be using LangChain, which is a programming framework for working with generative AI, so large language models and anything else where you're generating content. Now, for those of you who like spoilers, this is what we're going to be doing today. So first of all, in order to get started, you're going to need to be creating an OpenAI developer account, and you need to integrate that with Workspace. Next up, you're going to be using the chat functionality of the OpenAI API, and we're going to do this both with and without LangChain. We do a little bit of prompt engineering, and then we're going to try and hold a longer conversation with GPT, so having a few backwards and forwards in a longer conversation, and then we're going to come up with some ideas for incorporating GPT into either a data analysis or data science workflow. And the data set we're using is pretty interesting. It's all about electric car registrations in Washington State in the United States. So before we write any code at all, we're going to go through how to set up a developer account with OpenAI. If you've got an account already, you can skip this part. But for everyone else, please click on the Files section on the left-hand side and go to the Getting Started notebook. I'm just going to close the File section down again. So first thing we need to do is create a developer account. So I'm going to click on the API sign up page link and click follow link. I already have an account, so I'm not going to do this myself, but you can see you can either provide an email address directly, or you can use an existing Google, Microsoft, or Apple account. One thing to note, you do need to provide a real phone number to be verified for this. Let me close that down. I'll go back to the notebook. If you get stuck with this, then you can see this in more detail what to do. So the next section is that we need an API key. So we're going to get a secret key here. So I'm going to click follow link. I already have a key set up. So this is a page within my account. What you can do is click create new secret key. You're going to give it a name, something like DataCamp project. And you can click create secret key. Once you've clicked create new secret key, you're going to get this string of letters, numbers. This is your secret key, which you can copy with the button on the right. Now, one thing to note, once you've clicked done, you're not going to be able to see this again, but you need this. So if you lose what you've got in your clipboard, I'm going to show you how to revoke your key and create a new one. So in this case, actually, I don't need two different keys. I've got one already. So I'm going to click revoke key, the little trash can on the right. And I'm going to revoke this. Once you've proved you're human, that will delete your key. You can just create a new one using the create new secret key again. I am going to pass on that this time. So we're going to close this window down, go back to the notebook. The next thing you need to do is add a payment method. Now, accessing the OpenAI API is not free. It's fairly cheap, but not completely free, which is why you have to add a debit or credit card. There's some details of the payment here. I've said it should cost less than 2 cents. In practice, it was somewhere between 1 and 2 cents for me. And sometimes you do get free credits from OpenAI when you sign up for a new developer account. Obviously, I can't guarantee this because these details change over time. All right, so we're going to click on the payment methods page. I'm going to follow the link again. I've got a payment method here. All you have to do is click add payment method. I presume you've done online shopping before. You know how to fill in your credit card details, so I'm not going to get into that now. If you close this down, we go back to the notebook. The next thing, for this particular case, we can skip the pinecone details. We're not using that today. We're not using Hugging Face either. So you need to go down to the Setting Up Workspace Integration section. And on the left-hand side, you're going to click on Environment. If you scroll down to the Environment Variables section, you're going to click plus. You're going to type in, for the name, you want OpenAI API key. And the value, you're going to paste in that string of digits that you used before. In this case, you can't steal my API key because I revoked it, but that's what you can do. And then in the name, you're going to give it something meaningful. I'm just going to call it some DataCamp projects. Then click Create. Now, I already have environment variable set up, so I'm saying cancel, but you want the Create button. And then the next thing to do is make sure that the environment variables are connected. So you go to whatever you just created. On the right, there's a ... and you're going to click Connect, and this is going to restart your workspace. All right, so I'm going to close down the environment pane, and I'm going to open up Files again. And we're going to go back to notebook.ipynb, so this is the thing for us to fill in. If at any point you do get stuck, there is a solution with all the complete code that you need to write and examples of the output. But for now, back to notebook.ipynb, close down the file browser. Let's return to where we were in this notebook. So we were just on the setup stuff, creating a developer account, and now we have to make sure that we have all the right Python packages available. Now, Workspace by default has most of the packages you need for doing data analysis or data science already, so you don't need to install anything. With LangChain, because it's being developed so quickly at the moment and it's changing a lot, it's not included by default, so we have to install it using pip install. And because it's changing a lot, we're also going to fix the version. So in this case, we're fixing the version to 0.0300. If you want to try with the latest version, you can just delete this and just pip install LangChain. Depending on how far in the future you are, this code might not work, so you take your chances there. Anyway, I'm going to run this cell to install the LangChain package. One of the things is that LangChain requires at the moment needs a fairly recent version of the typing extensions package, so we're going to install that as well. It should take you 5 or 10 seconds or so to run each of these. Once we've done that, we have all the packages that we need. And the next thing is to connect up GPT, or at least connect up the OpenAI API and Workspace together. So we're going to start writing some code. So we're going to do import the OS package. So OS has some utilities for working with your file system. And then we're going to import the OpenAI package. This is used for connecting to the OpenAI API. And then the next thing, we need to make sure that this OpenAI package knows where our secret key has been stored. So we're going to do OpenAI.API_key. And we're going to set this to os.environ. We want square brackets and then quotes. And I called it OpenAI_API_key. If you named it something different when you were messing about in the environment pane, then change this value to whatever you wrote down. So we're going to click run. If you get an error here, most likely what you didn't do was do the connection thing. Just double check you got a green dot next to the environment variables that you set up. Next up, we're going to import the LangChain package. So we're going to start off with a simple import that's not quite spelled correctly. So we're going to import, I'm going to copy and paste so we're not doing typos. All right, import LangChain, and we're going to use the abbreviation LC because LangChain is far too many letters to type. And next, because LangChain is huge, it's got a load of different submodules with different bits of functionality. Just for convenience for typing, we're going to import some of those functions directly. So from langchain.chat modules, again, I'm going to copy this and paste. We can do import chat OpenAI. So chat OpenAI is for doing chatting by the OpenAI API. And then from the LangChain.schema module. We're going to import classes for 3 kinds of messages, so AI message, human message, and system message. We will get into these in greater detail later on. So I'm going to run this. And finally, in terms of imports, we can do a bit of standard data analysis stuff. So we're going to use pandas for data manipulation. We're going to use Plotly Express for visualization. So some standard issue code for data analysis. We're going to import pandas as PD. We're going to import plotly.express as px. And then very last imports. So for displaying content in Jupyter notebooks such as Workspace, there's the ipython.display package. So this has some good stuff to make things look pretty when you print them. And so from there, we're going to do import the display function and also the markdown function. So markdown has capital M, just be wary of that. All right, so we've created our developer account, we've installed the packages, we've imported the packages, we're now ready to actually do some work. Excellent. So first thing, we need to import the data set. It's contained in a CSV file called electriccars.csv. So if we go to the file browser, you can see electriccars.csv. And the details of this, we're going to print out the data set so you'll see it in a bit more detail in a moment. But essentially, we've got a few columns. So we've got things about a location within Washington State, so city and county. We've got details about the type of car, so model year, make, and model name. Then we've got the type of electric vehicle, whether it's a hybrid or pure electric vehicle. And then we've got the count. So this is the number of cars registered within that particular city and county, and for that particular model year, make, and model. And so we've got counts for each of these groups. So let's import that data set. So first thing, we're going to assign this to a variable called electric cars, and we do pd.read_csv. And one thing that's quite useful in Workspace, if you click on files, and just to the right of the file name, if you click on the ... you can do copy path to clipboard. I'm just going to close the file browser again, and then we can just paste in the name of the file. So if you're very typo prone as I am, then that's very helpful to do. Now, before we print out the whole data set, it's quite nice to get some summary stats about each of the columns. So we are going to do electric cars. So we start with the name of the data frame, and then we use describe to get column details, and then we're going to actually, rather than printing it, let's make use of that display function we just imported. So display is going to give us slightly nicer output than print. And by default, the pandas data frame describe method will only give us summary stats about numeric columns. So we're going to do the same again, but this time we're going to ask for things about text columns. So we're going to add the include argument. So we're going to do include equals, and then you want a capital O inside quotes. So O is short for object. Pandas uses an object type to store text columns. And then finally, we're going to do display the whole of electric cars. Let's run this and see some output. All right, so lots of output here. You can see we have a description of the numeric columns. So we've got model year details. You can see the first electric car was registered in 1997. There's also some stuff from 2024, which as of now is in the future. I'm not quite sure how that happened. Maybe some dodgy data. And then you can see in terms of the number of cars, the biggest set here was it's like 1,500 cars in one particular city, and for one particular sort of model year, make, model combination. Looking at the text columns, we get some slightly different output. So one thing to note is the most popular category. So the most popular make is Tesla, but the most popular model is Leaf, which I believe is a Nissan car. So it's interesting those two things are different. And also notable is that the battery electric vehicles are more popular than the plug-in hybrid electric vehicles. And here you can see the data set. So these are actually ordered in decreasing order of count. So you can see this most popular combination here is in the city of Seattle within King County. It's the 2023 Tesla Model Y car, and there were 1,500 of those. All right, so much for messing about with some data sets. Let's get into chatting with GPT. I'm going to take a swig of coffee first. It's very much against type. Normally I drink tea, but we're going for coffee today. All right, so let's go for, we're going to create a prompt, and we're going to send that to GPT, and we're going to get a response back. And just to begin with, it's sometimes when you're doing this the first time, don't bother asking any particular details about the data set or trying to ask a really important question. You just want to have the equivalent of saying, well, is this microphone turned on? So we're going to do tap, 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 testing, testing, 1, 2, just to see if we can actually get a response back. And to begin with, we're not going to mess about with LangChain. We are just going to use the OpenAI package to call the API directly. Now, there are two types of messages you need to know about. The first thing is a system message. So a system message describes the behavior of the AI assistant. So GPT is essentially sort of doing role playing. And so the system message describes what character GPT is going to role play. And a good thing, if you're not quite sure what you want, just say you're a helpful assistant. That's pretty generic. The second thing is you have user messages. So user messages describe what you want the AI to say. So we're going to cover plenty of examples of this today. But so system message, who we are, user is what kind of response are you asking for. All right, so here are the instructions. We're going to define a system message and a user message and then send those to GPT. There are some code hints here just to explain what the format of the thing we're sending to GPT is. So first up, we're going to create a system message. And I put the text up here, so we're going to just copy this. And then we're going to create a user message. Again, we're going to copy and paste. And we've got to combine these together in a format that the OpenAI API is going to understand. So we want a list of messages. We're going to use square brackets for list. And then each message is going to take the form of a dictionary. And the dictionary has two elements. The first element is going to be the role. And for this first message, it's a system message. So we use role system. Recall the syntax for dictionaries. You've got the key name and a colon and then the value. And put a comma in there, and we're going to define the content now, which we've said is this system message test variable. Now, outside the braces, we have a comma because we want a second message. We put more braces for the second dictionary object, and again, this has a role key, which this time is going to be user. And then we've got the content key, and the value this time is going to be user message test. And now we're all set up to send a message to GPT. So we're going to store the response in a variable called response test, and then we call OpenAI dot chat completion dot create. And this takes two variables. So the first one is going to be the model name we're going to use. So it's going to be GPT 3.5 turbo. So that's the sort of official model name for GPT 3.5. If you've got access to GPT 4, you're welcome to change this to GPT 4, although the quality of the answers doesn't really matter hugely in this case, and you'll just be paying more money. Next, we have the messages argument, and we've stored those in messages test. All right, let's run all this. Typically takes about 10 to 15 seconds to get a response. In that case, much faster, only 2 or 3 seconds. Okay, so we've got a response. Let's have a look at what we get back. Now, it isn't just a string response. We also get a lot of metadata, so it actually turns out to be quite a complicated object. It's very nested. Again, we've got some code hints just to talk about how to extract useful bits from the response. So first up, we're going to print the whole response. So we call this variable response test. And then just so you can see how the content looks, we can do print response test, and then I'm going to use this code hint because I can never remember how to navigate this object without a little prompt. So it's the choices element, and then the 0th element in that resulting list, and then the message element of that, and then the content element of that. So it's quite complicated code. And then I just copied that, so I'm just going to paste that in. Fortunately, it's in the same place every time, so you can just copy and paste. Let's run that. Okay, so let's look at this response object. You can see that was the choices, and then we've got a list, and it's the 0th element, and then the message and the content. So this is the sort of useful bit we've extracted. But then you have a ton of detail around things like which model was used, how much did you spend on it, and all sorts of things that we don't necessarily care about here. So this is just the responses content. This is the useful bit, and you can see, okay, well, this is what GPT means, and it's actually because we've not told it an awful lot of details. This isn't giving us a great deal of detail, but it's saying, well, this is what GPT is, and you can use it for generating text, summarizing documents, things like that. Now that we've had a very brief conversation with GPT, so we sent it a prompt, we got a response back, we know that it's working, it means that we can start asking questions that are related to our data analysis. And one really great thing to do when you're doing exploratory data analysis is to start by asking GPT some questions that you can answer with your data set. So rather than having to come up with your data analysis project ideas by yourself, you can get the AI to do it for you. So we're going to have another prompt and response combination with GPT. This time we're going to use the LangChain package. Now, why should we use LangChain, you might ask? Because obviously it worked perfectly well with just the OpenAI package. Now, there are two main benefits of using LangChain. So firstly, it simplifies some of the code that you need to write. So we just saw that when you get the response back from GPT, there's a lot of messing about with square brackets, trying to access the response content that was sort of deep in the response object. And you also saw that when you were creating the messages to send, you had to have a list, and it was a list of dictionaries. It's a little bit complicated. So some of the code you're going to write using LangChain is a little bit easier. Secondly, LangChain is designed to make your code more portable. So for example, if you want to swap GPT for a different model at a later date, that's going to make it easier. And this is really useful in a corporate setting. So particularly if you're at a large company where you have lots of different teams using lots of different models, it makes it easier to share your code between teams and reuse code from one project to the next. Okay, so some of the terminology with message types is a little bit different with LangChain compared to using the OpenAI package directly. So those system messages we saw before, there's a class called system message, which is equivalent. So terminology fairly similar there, but user messages are now called human messages. So the code we're going to write is a little bit different. Now, I've provided a dataset description variable here, so this text is really more or less the same as what you saw in the data dictionary before. So this is just a full description of what the dataset is about. And this is a really useful thing with it's called prompt engineering, where you provide as much context as possible in order to provide a higher quality result. So anytime you're doing data analysis, it really helps GPT provide good responses if you provide all those details about the dataset. All right, so this is the description of the data. We need to ask GPT to do something, and so I'm going to create this variable called suggest questions. And if we scroll up to the instructions, here's some text to use. All right, so I'm going to paste that in there, and here we've asked. We're going to ask GPT to suggest some data analysis questions that could be answered with this data set. So again, this is a really good starting point if you're doing exploratory data analysis. Now, we need to get our text into a form that GPT can understand. So we're going to create a variable called messages suggest questions. And this is again going to be a list. The first message here is going to be of type system message. Oh, not system error, system message. And this takes a content argument. And if we scroll up, I've got a suggestion here. So here we have, you are a data analysis expert. And what this is doing is saying, well, GPT, you need to role play as a data analysis expert. That means I'm expecting high quality answers about data analysis. If you said you're a hairdresser instead, you're going to get answers about hair and probably not some great quality answers about data analysis. Feel free to play around with different system messages. This one works pretty well. Okay, next thing is we want a human message. And again, this has a content argument. And what we're going to do, we need to combine this dataset description variable and this suggest questions variable. And when you're combining existing variables, it's really nice to do this with an F string. So an F string lets you include existing variables inside a new string. So first of all, we want dataset description. And because it's an existing variable, we put this inside curly braces. Let's have a couple of new lines in between. And then we're going to have the suggest questions variable. Again, curly braces, suggest questions, and then run this cell. So we're just creating some new strings, so that ran really quickly. And now it's time to call GPT again. So we're going to create a variable called chat. And this is going to be a chat OpenAI object. We're not going to change any of the parameters here, so just open and close parentheses. And this chat object that gets created, even though it's the return value from a function, it is in fact, you can call this like a function yourself. So you'll see that in just a moment. Again, we want to get a response. And to do this, we just call chat, the variable we created, and we pass in those messages. So we can do messages, suggest questions, pop that in there. Now, to see what the response is, we're going to do print, and we've got this response suggest questions variable, so this is going to give us the whole thing. It's also helpful just to see the response's content. Now, before, remember, we had a load of square brackets to deal with. Now we just have to say dot content. And then finally, one thing I think is helpful to let you understand what's being sent back from the API. We're going to print the type of this. Let's run this. Okay, so here you can see the whole response. We've got some content and there's a lot of text there. We've also got things for additional keywords and an example element. So LangChain has the concept of example conversations. It's a fairly advanced feature. It's not something we need here. And then when we just printed the responses content, you can see it's given us 10 ideas for questions we can answer about this data set. We're not going to go through all 10 today. We're just going to do answer a couple of questions about the data set. If you get excited about this data set, then feel free to work through and continue doing data analysis, answer some more of these questions yourself. And finally, we asked for the type of the response. You can see this has type AI message. Now, the next thing to do is to have a longer conversation with GPT. So far, we've just sent a prompt, we've got a response back. Sometimes that's enough. More often, you want to have a series of prompts and responses. So that's the idea of a conversation, just going backwards and forwards several times. And GPT needs to be able to remember what was said previously in order to have context for its next response. And this is one reason why we have this idea of an AI message. So when you're having these longer conversations, you want to be able to distinguish between the human messages that you sent and the AI messages that GPT returned, so you can tell who said what in the conversation. Now, one of the tricks we're going to use here is we're going to display markdown content prettily. So we're going to ask GPT to generate some code for us. And when GPT generates code as an output, it often formats this as a markdown code block. So that means it puts the code inside triple backticks, and this says this content here is supposed to be some kind of code. And inside a Jupyter notebook, so it just works. This Workspace notebook. If you, instead of printing the output, you use display and markdown together, it's going to give you some nice formatting. All right, so let's continue the conversation. So we're going to create a new message list, and we need to start with the previous messages that were sent. I'm going to scroll back up here to try and remind myself what the variable is called. So I think we called it messages suggest questions. And you see this is a list already. And recall Python has this nice feature where if you add two lists together, you get a longer list with the contents of both of them, one concatenated after the other. So we're going to have a new list, so we're using square brackets here. The next thing we need to add in is the previous response. So I'll scroll back again, and we called it responses suggest questions. I'm going to put a comma, and then finally we need to add in our next prompt, our next human message. So again, we use the content argument, and we want to let's ask it about something like getting the top models, so the most popular make and model combinations throughout Washington State, and we want, rather than just giving us a list, we're going to ask it to write some Python code for us. So I'm going to say write Python code to find the, I'm going to find the top make and model combinations of electric car in Washington State. So we're going to pass the message to GPT. So same thing as before, we want to get assign a response variable, and which is called chat, and we pass in our messages, which now got, so it's 4 in total. So we've got a system message, human message, AI message, human message. And finally, we want to display the results. So this time we're doing display and markdown. Got to be careful, there's capital M in there. And we're going to get the response variable, and we just want the content element rather than the whole thing. So let's run that. Again, we expect it to take sort of 10-15 seconds to run. Okay, so here we go. This is the output, and you can see it's pretty nice, the output. So we've got some variable names or some functionality there. So this is highlighted in as code there. And then we've got, here's the Python code. And look, you've got syntax highlighting. So you've got green comments, and then you've got strings in pink. So all this is much easier to read. All right, so here's the code that it's provided. And one thing we can do is copy this. There's a nice little workspace feature. And an important thing to note about any kind of workflow you have with GPT, it's called an AI assistant for a reason, not an AI expert. So the standard workflow is that you treat the AI as your junior data analyst, and then you are the boss. So you've got to do reviewing the AI's work. You're in charge. So what we need to do is paste this code in, and to review it, the first thing you might want to do is just run the code and see what the output looks like, see if it's correct. All right, so this is pretty interesting. So we've got a few different, we've got make model combinations, that's good, and counts. We asked for the top model, so these are like the most popular stuff, so they are ordered in descending order of counts. That looks pretty good. So the output looks like it might be correct. If I'm being picky, I might have said, well, we only asked for the top model, we didn't ask for every single model, so I might want to go, well, actually we don't care about cases where there's only one of these things. It's probably bad data at that point. And then we can have a look through the code. It's using size here, which is sort of okay. I'm pretty sure there's like a value counts method in Pandas, so if I'm being picky, I might be like, well, okay, I'm sure there's a better method here. But otherwise, at first glance, this code looks okay to me. So it seems to have got the right answer for us. I'd be happy with that. Might give some feedback about like the methodology. One thing to note, so I did test this a few times. GPT didn't always get the right answer. It did sometimes try and use sum, and it was giving me wrong function calls. So you really do need to check the results here. If you did get a case where GPT gave an incorrect response, one feature that's built into Workspace is that there's an AI assistant. So if you get an error, then the AI assistant will pop up and it gives you the opportunity to fix the code. The AI Workspace is in fact powered by GPT, so is doing a similar sort of thing, but it means you don't have to you don't have to sort of manually pass in questions about errors yourself. You can just click a button and get it solved. All right. So we've got a right answer. Let's do some more data analysis. And doing more data analysis really just means let's continue the conversation. So just append new human messages to your existing message list, call the chat function again. So we're going to draw a plot next. Before we get into that, one thing I want to note is that the output from GPT is a little bit random. So it's a probabilistic model. And that means that if you send it the same prompt multiple times, you're not going to get exactly the same response back. This isn't always desirable. So quite often in data analysis or data science, you want your results to be reproducible. So you want the output from GPT to be as close as possible to the same every time. Now, with large language models, the amount of randomness can be controlled with a parameter known as temperature. So in the case of GPT, this temperature parameter ranges from 0 to 2. So 0 means minimal randomness, so more easy to reproduce results. And 2 means maximum randomness, so you're going to get some sort of wildcard ideas there. Quite often the responses are a little bit weird, like sometimes close to gibberish at that point. If you use the OpenAI API directly, so if you're using the OpenAI package, then the default value for temperature is 1. the defaults in LangChain have been changed. So the default is actually 0.7. So far, that's the value we've been using in this conversation. All right, so to change the temperature, we need to create a new chat object. So we're going to call this one chat0. And again, it's a chat OpenAI object. This time, rather than just having no parameters, we're going to set temperature to 0. Let's run that. All right, so let's ask GPT to draw us a bar plot. And what we need to do is create that message list again. So we'll call it messages. We're going to ask it for some Python code again. So it's called Python plot. We're going to start with the existing conversation. So I'm going to scroll back up and get our last set of messages. A couple of tasks back. Where were we? So messages top Python models. There we go. And again, we're going to add on a new list, and I think we call it responses, RSPS, Python top models, and then we want a new human message with the content argument, and we're going to say write some Python code to I wrote this down in the instructions, we didn't have to do it again. So we're going to write some Python code to draw a bar plot of the total count of electric cars by model years with bars colored by electric vehicle type. There we go. So that's what we wanted to do. Now, in the case of Python, there are so many different packages for drawing plots. It's helpful if we tell it which package to use. So that's just a little prompt engineering tip again. Now, you can pick any package you want. I quite like Plotly Express, so I'm going to say use the Plotly Express package. All right, so we've got our messages, and now we want a response. I'm going to call this response Python plot, and we're going to call chat0 this time. So just make sure you're not using the original chat. You can use chat0. I'm going to pass in these messages. And since we asked it to to write some code for us, again, we're going to use that trick of saying display markdown in order to get the pretty formatting. All right, and we just want the content element. So let's run this, and hopefully it's going to give us some nice content. All right, so here we're going to go through what this code is and whether or not it's good, as we did before, in a moment. Before we get to that, I want to see, did our attempt at setting the temperature to 0 make this more reproducible? So let's call GPT again. We're going to send it exactly the same list of messages as before. So it's the same conversation, same request to GPT again. And we're going to see, does it actually give us the same output or not? So in this case, I'm going to just take those last two lines of code again. So this is a bit where we call chat to ask for a response and then display it. So I'm going to copy this. Let's paste it in here. I'm going to change the variable name so we don't overwrite the previous variable. So we can call it response Python plot 1. Let's run this. Okay, so we're going to see, what does this output look like, and is it the same as before? All right, so here you can see we've got a sentence or so at the beginning saying to draw the bar plot, blah, 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 blah. You can use this code. We've got some code, it's got grouped by some reset index, and then we've got a bar, px.bar plot, and then show the figure, and then we've got 5 or so lines of text afterwards. So, is this exactly the same as before? Let's go back to the previous section, and in this case it looks like at first glance this code is either very similar or identical. We could probably check if the output is identical or not, but here it looks pretty much the same. So when I was testing this before, I found that most of the time the output was identical. Occasionally I found very, very small differences, so you're not guaranteed like perfectly identical code, but in most cases it is going to be incredibly similar. So in this case, it looks like the final sentence is finally the plot is displayed by fig.show, and here in the final sentence it says finally the plot is displayed by the show function. So in this case you can see that there are very, very subtle differences. So it's almost identical but not completely identical. All right, so the last thing we have to do then is act as boss again and do some reviewing. So I'm going to copy this code, and again we're going to paste it into a blank cell and just run it and see what it gets. So in this case, so we asked it for a bar plot, which we have, and we wanted the count, total count by model year, which we have, and we wanted it colored by electric vehicle type, so it's done that. It's even given us a nice title for the plot, and that looks like it's got the right answer. So again, GPT has managed to write us some code. It took 10 seconds, give or take, which is faster than I could write that code for doing the data manipulation and then creating the bar plot. So it is a pretty great time saver there. Remember at this, earlier on in this, we found 10 different questions that you could answer with this data set. I encourage you to go back to that task, see what we've not calculated yet, have a go at getting GPT to write some code for you in order to solve those problems, and then just seeing does it work or not. But with that, we can wrap up for everyone who doesn't want to continue. So what have we seen? Well, you've managed to access the GPT AI via the OpenAI API. We've done this both directly using the OpenAI package and with that extra sort of convenience layer using LangChain. And you've used GPT both for coming up with ideas for analysis and also writing code for you. Finally, you've seen how to have an extended conversation, so having that back and forth with prompt and response, you know, the human messages and AI messages together. And you've seen how to control the temperature to change the reproducibility of the responses. I hope you've enjoyed the project. It's been great fun working through this with you, and I hope you enjoy the other projects in this AI series. Thank you.